If there were a smoking gun, I think we'd be talking about it.
How can Lindsey Graham in Washington, D.C. on Meet the Press say that he hasn't seen a smoking gun of evidence, that he doesn't think that we produce enough evidence to impeach Joe Biden? Well, I think somebody better run for senator in South Carolina.
Republican Senator and Trump critic turned cultist Lindsey Graham kicked the MAGA hornet's nest today when he told the press that House Republicans have failed to produce an impeachable smoking gun against the president. And this in turn triggered a furious Marjorie Taylor Greene to pop off at a conservative rally, and she publicly demanded that Graham be primaried and defeated in his next election. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, this is going to be a lot of fun. I have several clips to play. The MAGA Civil War apparently not only hasn't ended, it's actually opening up a second theater, because in the past, they've been confined to just the House of Representatives in which they fight and bicker amongst themselves. But now you have a prominent Republican congressperson taking shots at another prominent Republican senator. Okay, so there's a lot of fodder here, a lot of drama. Now, before I play the clip of Lindsey Graham, I want to give you what he's asked to react to, because he's asked to react to a quote from a fellow Republican senator named Chuck Grassley. Grassley, who has investigated Hunter and Joe Biden in the past during the Trump administration. So Grassley was a guy who took shot one at this, what House Republicans are trying to do now. And his response to the House Republicans' effort is pretty damning.
He said that his father was not financially involved in any way with his business. Do you accept that?
I'm going to take the same position I've taken since 2019, that all I can say is there's some indication of maybe some compromise with China particularly, but I have no evidence of it, and I'm going to just follow the facts where they are, and the facts haven't taken me to that point where I can say that the president's guilty of anything.
Again, that's pretty damning. Grassley was involved in Senate Republicans' desperate attempts to try to tar and feather Joe Biden through Hunter Biden in 2020. Grassley was the guy who talked about that top secret FBI form, which suggested that Joe Biden was bribed, right? Grassley was the one who made a big stink about that. And so for him to publicly say, listen, the evidence isn't there for me to say the president's guilty of anything, that's damning of his efforts, it's damning of House Republicans' efforts. And with all that in mind, Lindsey Graham is asked to react to that.
Let's turn to the other big story on Capitol Hill, the impeachment, of course, of impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Your colleague, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, said that he does not see any evidence, quote, that the president is guilty of anything. Do you agree with him? Is there any evidence so far?
You know, I haven't really been paying that much attention to it. They have to prove that President Biden somehow financially benefited from the business enterprises of Hunter Biden. We'll see.
Have they done it yet, in your mind?
If there were a smoking gun, I think we'd be talking about it. But, you know, the narrative that Hunter Biden presented is falling apart. The idea that Joe Biden knew nothing about the business dealing is falling apart. I'm not worried about impeaching the president right now. You know what I'm worried about? Helping the president bring the Mideast to a better spot.
So then he turns the topic back to foreign policy and the southern border and things like that. And listen, as you may or may not know, Lindsey Graham is a Trump sycophant now, and so he's probably as sympathetic to successfully impeaching and convicting President Biden as much as possible, because that would be a great asset to Donald Trump. And even he's like, listen, if there were a smoking gun, we'd be talking about it. And then he changes the subject. Again, pretty damning, all things considered. Now, before I play Marjorie Taylor Greene's response, I also want to point out a comment made by another Republican senator who is also anti-Biden, who is also very pro-MAGA, who definitely wants Biden gone. He actually makes an interesting observation and caution to House Republicans about the kind of claims that they make and what they send potentially to the Senate.
If they send us a case, make sure it's convictable. And the bar is real high. There's no question about it. It's got to be a misdemeanor, high crime, or treason. And the other bar, it has to be committed while he was in office, the current office he holds. So what he did as a vice president, what he did in between the two may not be impeachable.
That's very true. So what he's saying is that even if they found evidence that Joe Biden did some shady stuff when he was vice president under Barack Obama to help his son, and to be very clear, they have produced nothing, no evidence whatsoever to even suggest that. Mark Wayne Mullen is correct. That is not technically an impeachable offense because Joe Biden is not vice president. He is president. If you want to impeach him for stuff he did while he was president, if you're saying he's unfit for the office of the president, you have to prove a high crime, misdemeanor, or treason while he was president, which means they're going to have to prove that he did something with respect to China or Ukraine as part of this alleged quid pro quo. So just a very high burden. They are almost certain to fail if they're doing it in good faith. Now, having said all that up, this was Marjorie Taylor Greene's response to Lindsey Graham.
How can Lindsey Graham in Washington, D.C. on Meet the Press say that he hasn't seen a smoking gun of evidence, that he doesn't think that we produce enough evidence to impeach Joe Biden? Let me ask the American people, do you think that we have produced enough evidence to impeach Joe Biden? Well, I think somebody better run for senator in South Carolina.
South Carolina, of course, being the state which Lindsey Graham represents in the Senate. So, of course, the irony there is she's polling a Turning Point USA conservative conference. This is the most deranged, perhaps other than CPAC, right-wing conference it gets. Of course, they want to impeach Joe Biden. That doesn't mean they'll be able to make a convictable case in the Senate. So you're having a sampling error, Marjorie Taylor Greene. The polling suggests otherwise, that people are not sold that Joe Biden committed an impeachable offense. So anyway, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. I will actually point out another clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene in which she insults actually not just Democrats, but also her fellow Republicans. And that's always fun.
Money, because I am sick and tired of the stupid people in Washington making horrible decisions, causing Americans to go broke. And that's what they have done. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And it's because we have stupid people in Washington, D.C. And I can say that for a fact because I work with many of them. And I'm not just talking about Democrats.
Well, again, that's pretty damning coming from Marjorie Taylor Greene, but it's not really the first time that she said stuff like that. She's been openly critical of her own party, which is good. Now, of course, the irony is that Marjorie Taylor Greene herself is one of, if not the dumbest person in Congress, objectively, intellectually inferior by far to every elected Democrat. There's not a single elected Democrat in the United States Congress in either chamber who is dumber or as dumb as Marjorie Taylor Greene. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. And so when she says things like this,
our party sucks. I totally feel that way. And guess what? Our voters feel that way. And that
she's not wrong, right? This is one occasion where she's occasionally correct. Now, bringing us back to Lindsey Graham, okay, because she's publicly called now for Lindsey Graham to be primaried. Somebody should run for senator in South Carolina. She clearly wants him gone. She deems him insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. I want to play you a clip of a recent Trump rally in which Trump references Lindsey Graham, and I want you to hear how people react.
Another man who's always there. He's always, I'll tell you what, when I need help on the left, he's great. He's great. And he's my friend, too. Lindsey Graham, wherever you are. Lindsey, thank you. Oh, no. He helps me on the left. We need help sometimes.
So, again, to Trump, loyalty is down up, right? He has no loyalty to his subordinates. And so he doesn't care. Right now, Lindsey Graham is a useful tool, but he has no affection for Lindsey Graham. And you can tell that MAGA cultists despise Lindsey Graham. And to be honest with you, I get it. I despise Lindsey Graham, but I'm a progressive Democrat. But really, fellow Republicans have every right to despise Lindsey Graham, too, because he's a coward and a sycophant. He's obsequious in the worst possible way. And the last clip I'll play is this. This was when Lindsey Graham demonstrated some modicum of principle.
I think Donald Trump is a con man. I think he would destroy the Republican Party. I have differences with Ted Cruz that are well known, but I think we share the same political DNA.
That was when Ted Cruz was basically the last man standing besides Donald Trump himself in the 2016 Republican primary. So, yeah, that's basically it. I mean, the House Republicans have failed so spectacularly that they can't persuade Chuck Grassley or Lindsey Graham or probably most Republican senators, and they need a supermajority to convict Biden anyway. The polls don't reflect that the American people believe there's an impeachable offense here. There's actually dissent among fellow Republicans in the House of Representatives. People who even voted for the inquiry but say, listen, the evidence isn't there. So this is absolutely an utter sham of an impeachment effort. But I'd like to see where the tension between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lindsey Graham goes and the role that Donald Trump will play. Because, again, as we've seen, Donald Trump has no conception of loyalty. And so I think if Lindsey Graham is hoping that Donald Trump will protect him when he runs for re-election in 2026, I think he's sorely mistaken. I think it's very easy that Donald Trump will forget entirely about who Lindsey Graham is. And if he pisses off MAGA enough, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a much more right-wing challenger who goes after Lindsey Graham's seat in 2026. Let me know what you think.